This is the Healthcare Marketplace Specialization, Healthcare Marketplace Overview. My name is Steve Parenti, and this is Module 1.3.2 and the concluding module for Module 1. And this will focus on the effects of health behaviors. So in the previous module, we talked about some demographic factors. It's important to understand what health behaviors are and how they contribute to the health economy and the marketplace. First of all, defining what is a health bad. This is something that economists talk about a bit. The goal is not to be judgmental. It's really just to identify things that we know that people do that will basically lead to costs that will go up. So one question, first of all, is why do economists and others even care? Economists use this term a lot called externalities, and it could be a positive or negative externality, but this defined technically as a case in which a consumer or a producer affects the utility, that is, measure of happiness, and or cost of another consumer or producer through actions that lie outside the price system, public price, or that's something that's not accounted for in the private price system. In English, what that means is that you do something that's having an unintended consequence. You don't expect it to be that way, but it's actually going to have a cost on somebody else. So classic examples are, we're going to have all this awesome electrical power. It's going to make sure our lives are so much better in the future. But to doing that, we're basically going to be pumping a ton of coal into the air, and that's going to really pollute our skies. And potentially the discharge from warming all the water is going to kill all our fish. Those are negative externalities that can come into play. A positive externality really depends on your perspective in terms of recreational drugs or recreaceuticals, not illegal ones, is that you do some clinical testing, you put some substance on your little white mice, and you see what goes on for little white mice, and you realize, oh my God, the little white mice are very excited, particularly if they're male white mice. And you realize that this cardiac medication that you're testing to see whether or not there's any side effects turns out to be Viagra in the end, or developed as Viagra. It's a positive externality for the drug companies that produced it, but not really what the intended effects were going to be. So what we are concerned about is when there are times when the market will fail, otherwise known as market failure. We need to figure out ways in the economy to fix things. So we know that flu shots, if everyone gets them, is going to be a good idea. The thought is if we give subsidies for folks so they get them for free, that can make sure the flu doesn't have to spread as aggressively. Another thing is to control for a negative externality for cigarettes. Cigarettes, we know, will kill people in terms of them getting lung cancer. There's actually a few genetic supermen. Well, nothing's going to take them out, but most people will fall for this. And then worse even, is secondhand smoke has a really dramatic consequence. And so what we do is we put a excise tax, there's a tax right on the price of buying that cigarette to give money back to the government, but it's really and partially intended there to really have people think about what the adverse consequences of their actions are, and have those dollars then flow back to take care of the medical costs associated with smoking as a bad. So how bad is smoking? 90% of deaths that are associated with lung cancer are basically from smoking. There's also chronic bronchitis, emphysema, COPD. It's a major cause of heart disease. Has additional cancer associations as well, whether it be bladder, pancreatic, and cervical. I had a whole set of cousins that my mother had growing up in suburban Philadelphia. Pretty much everyone but one of the 5 died because of smoking and lung cancer over a period of basically 10 years. Vision and hearing problems. You can have slower healing from any injuries you might have. And so in 2000, pretty dramatic increase, effect, 435,000 deaths per year in 2000. Now, that's actually gotten better. We'll talk about this toward the end of the class, that trend has actually gotten improving, but it's still a very dramatic impact on health. Obesity. So linked to hypertension, high cholesterol, coronary heart disease, type 2 diabetes, depression, various types of cancer. 2000 alone, 400,000 deaths from obesity. It's not just about, boy, you just don't look great in your clothes anymore. It can actually really kill you. And the expenditure in 2003, $75 billion. You put that forward to today, it's nearly triple that amount of money in 2016. In terms of the actual trends for obesity, it's been getting much worse. In part, it's actually probably a negative externality of having food be so cheap. Famous economist and a good friend, actually, Tomas Philipson in the University of Chicago, has advanced this argument that essentially just cheap food and sedentary behavior have really played a horrible trick on the human body. in a way that we just weren't ever genetically designed to take care of. And then excessive alcohol consumption associated with lost productivity, disability, early death, crime, neglect of family responsibilities. And look, I'm not trying to draw any moral tales here. I will have a drink myself. But the reality is that it does kill people. 100,000 deaths from alcohol abuse in 2000. That is not getting much better. People are a little more mindful of what they're doing. There are taxes associated with it, but the motor vehicle accidents while driving are huge. People talk about gun violence in the United States, and that's terrible. But basically, a car and alcohol is far worse than that. This concludes our module 1, actually, in terms of looking at these behaviors. Going forward for module 2, we'll talk about the physician and hospital market and how it's evolved and what makes it unique. And in many cases, it makes it maybe one of the most unique features of the American healthcare system. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to you continuing on this specialization.